The Kingdom of Dreythal, a grandson's love. From the Killer and Keeper universe, the Kingdom of Dreythal, an ossuary realm of baroque decay and tenebrous grandeur. Its spires lacquered in the soot of centuries, and its battlements engraved with ossuary sigils. A realm of tenebrous grandeur and ruinous potency. 900 years before Yarvik, before ruin came and silence reclaimed its halls, Dreythal towered above all nations. A citadel whose shadow fell across the very bones of the world. Its knights were clad in the blackened scales of their slain foes, and its kings crowned with helms carved from dragon skulls. Children of House Vharros learned to wield spear and suspicion in equal measure. Their courts rang with the cadence of steel sharpening steel. Dreythal was so feared that no kingdom dared invade, for its warriors were not merely knights but dragon slayers, and their drake mounts were beasts bred for terror. The reputation of the scaled vanguard preceded them. They shattered entire armies with drake fire and spear, their banners darkening the sky with dread. Dreythal itself was a living weapon, a fortress built from wyrmbone, defended by legions whose very rite of passage demanded the slaying of a dragon. To oppose Dreythal was to face a people who hunted dragons as sport and crowned their kings with worm skulls, a nation forged in scale, blood, and flame. The Dragon Knights of Dreythal, figures cloaked in blood-pitted plate and ossuary-etched armor, their surfaces scarred by centuries of ruinous conquest. Their war gear bore votive carvings and grim talismans, fashioned from shattered wyrmbone. Villagers whispered that every knight was a walking reliquary of draconic curses, carrying the malign spirits of beasts they had slain. At midnight, they performed cryptic rites in shadowed halls, bleeding onto sigils scrawled in ash, binding drake fangs into their flesh, so that no blade nor oath could wholly sever them from the horrors they embodied. Their legend etched, not merely in steel, but in the textures of rusted iron and seared drake hide, draped in banners, tattered by centuries of flame. Their flesh bore ritual scars that mapped the grim superstitions of Dreythali villagers, who whispered that each knight's blood carried a drake's curse. Bone-etched sigils beneath their armor, and talismans crafted from cracked worm teeth, their very presence a brutal relic of ancient carnage and whispered doom. The Rakshan of Dreythal, known as the Scaled Vanguard, were legend. Each warrior a master of spear and lance, their steeds mighty drakes broken and bound in ritual. Their brutal training spanned a decade in the shadowed vaults of Ghal Vharros, where they learned to fight blindfolded, track prey by scent, and wrestle wormlings barehanded. The binding rite sealed their status, requiring each knight to defeat a juvenile drake in single combat, forging a bond of domination through blood and flame. Their armor was graveplate, rust burnished, charnel etched and layered with withered drake hide, overlapping dragon bone scales blood rusted and engraved with ossuary glyphs, some ash-scored and gouged by old claws, overlapping dragon bone scales lacquered obsidian, layered over chain of Wyrmpyre and lined with fire-resistant ashcloth. Helms were crested with drake horns, visors shaped to mimic dragon maws. Their primary weapon was the Wyrmpyre, a lance tipped with forged dragon fang. Many carried secondary blades, short sabers forged from molten drake claws. Their drake mounts, bred in the pits of Drath Cairn, were lean beasts known as ashwings. Clad in the knightly ranks of the Scaled Vanguard reflected mastery and prestige, each with its own banner, insignia, and oath. Lindworms, initiates and squires in training. Banner, A coiled silver serpent on a field of gray. Insignia, a single drake scale. Oath, in shadow I crawl, in fire I rise. Signature weapon designs, short practice spears and iron daggers, later upgraded to ashwood training worm spears. Famous campaigns. The Purge of the Hatchery Warrens, where lindworms proved themselves by overwhelming feral drakelings. Ties to nobility. Many noble houses assigned younger scions to the lindworms as a rite of passage. Tactics. Skirmishers and scouts supporting larger forces. Training. Rigorous endurance and discipline, learning to track and survive alone. Famous members, Squire Tailrin of House Vharros, who slew his first drake at 15. Drake claws. Full knights bonded to their first drake. Banner, twin drake talons clutching a red sun. Insignia, a claw-shaped brooch. Oath, my claw is the kingdom's grip. My breath its fire. Signature weapon designs. Standard worm spear and claw-curved shortsword. Famous campaigns. The Hunt of Grey Rock Spires. Ties to nobility. Corps officer cadre drawn from Dreythali nobility. Tactics. Shock cavalry. Harassing wings and flanks. Training. Bonding and combat from Drakeback. Famous members. Sir Revan Stonehand, who brought down 3 drakes in one charge. Worm Wardens, veterans with 5 or more dragons slain. Banner, a black worm pierced by 3 silver spears. Insignia, a fang circlet worn on the helm. Oath, I guard with steel and blood, the legacy of flame. Signature weapon designs, heavy worm spears and reinforced scale shields. Famous campaigns, the Battle of Blighted Hollows, ties to nobility, served as household champions. Tactics, holding the line and protecting commanders. Training, advanced drake killing techniques and formation warfare. Famous members, Dame Corrin, the Shield Breaker. Obsidian lords, commanders of dozens, hardened by campaigns. Banner, a jagged obsidian tower wreathed in flame. Insignia, a drake horn pauldron. Oath, stone in war, fire in heart, death to all foes. Signature weapon designs, obsidian-bladed polearms and command batons. Famous campaigns, the Ashen Campaign. Ties to nobility, senior scions or appointed by House Vharros. Tactics, battlefield command and siegecraft. Training, strategic doctrine and leadership. Famous members, Lord Halric Embervale. High Fang sovereigns, champions who slew elder worms alone. Banner, a crowned dragon's skull on a crimson field. Insignia, a pendant of dragon bone carved into a fanged maw. Oath, by my will the sky burns, by my blade kings fall. Signature weapon designs, personalized storied weapons of mythic quality. Famous campaigns, the cleansing of the embered peaks. Ties to nobility, only the greatest nobles or honored warriors could ascend. Tactics, duelists, terror troops. Training, secret rites and personalized drake hunts. Famous members, Tyrak Vharros himself was the first High Fang sovereign. Amphitheater. Elite spear throwers specializing in precision skirmishing. Banner, a silver-winged serpent hurling a spear on a black field. Insignia, a winged spearhead pin. Oath, my spear strikes from shadow and sky alike. Signature weapon designs. The Amphitheatre wielded the Skyfang Javelin, crafted from ashwood cores encased in dragon bone with obsidian tips, perfectly balanced for distance and precision. Each bore a notch for every dragon slain. Famous campaigns. The Shroud War, where the Amphitheatre annihilated the Drakekin of the Bleeding Peaks, and the Siege of Arkhal-Korath, where their spears darkened the skies and broke the siege in a single night. Ties to Dreythali nobility. The Amphitheatre were founded by House Erovar, an offshoot of House Vharros, known for its mastery of ranged warfare. Noble scions often served among them to earn prestige before ascending to higher command. Tactics. Amphitheatre fought in loose formations, darting between enemy lines, striking from flanks, and hurling their spears in coordinated volleys designed to blind and bleed dragons before the main charge. They moved as shadows, often using terrain and smoke to conceal approach. Training. Their regiment emphasized agility, precision, and the art of silent movement. Recruits were required to hit a target's eye from 50 paces and learn to leap from drakeback mid-flight to hurl spears from the air. Famous members. Commander Valen of the Falling Sky, who coordinated the rain of spears that blinded the Worm Queen Sarathar. Captain Illyra Emberhand, renowned for striking down 3 drakes in a single battle with perfectly placed throws. And Eric the Quiet, a master ambusher who single-handedly eliminated a rogue band of dragon riders by picking them off one by one in the Ashen Canyons. Among their heroes, each driven by scarred ambition, haunted by past betrayals, competing codes of honor, and traumas barely stitched beneath charnel armor. Warriors for whom loyalty was often indistinguishable from cruelty, and for whom every triumph was bought in flesh, bone, and fire. Their motives a labyrinth of doom-laden pride and grim necessity. Sir Caelion the Red, clad in crimson lacquered graveplate and wielding twin worm spears, was fierce and impulsive, a warrior poet who slew the twin worms of Morgath's Pass with reckless daring. Dame Sira the Ashen, tall and grim, wore pale gray scale armor traced with silver filigree, her worm spear slender and precise, reflecting her calculating mind as she brought down the storm drake Ezerak mid-flight. Sir Derek of the Black Veil, gaunt and somber, fought clad in blackened, battle-worn armor, etched with silent runes of mourning. His battered shield and broken lance spoke of grim endurance, and his stoic resolve carried him through as he defended Varoth Glen against 5 dragons alone. Other famed knights included Severix the Fangless, whose burnished copper armor was etched with claw marks, and who wielded a great axe forged from a drake's jawbone. A laughing brawler, known for his fearless charges, he was both feared and admired. Dame Alara of the Ember Vale, slender and severe, favored curved twin daggers of blackened dragon bone. Her dark green graveplate patterned like scales. Her drake mount was lean and fast, and she moved with deadly precision. Lord Garen the Hollow, stooped but deadly, clad in ancient cracked armor that revealed scorched flesh beneath. He bore a wicked glaive, and his quiet, sinister presence chilled allies and foes alike. The greatest campaign was the Battle of Wyrmpyre Fields, where they met the Crimson Flight beneath skies torn by fire. Sir Caelion the Red, once a poet scholar from a minor house, favored whirlwind spear dances in combat, and was infamous for taunting his foes with verse. His personal heraldry depicted a crimson drake, entwined with curling script on a black field, symbolizing his dual mastery of word and weapon. Caelion was born the 3rd son of a fallen noble line, and took up arms to redeem his house's name, writing epic poetry between battles that survives in Dreythali archives as grim verses of blood and sorrow. Dame Sira the Ashen was a former tactician who preferred precise ambush strikes from the clouds atop her swift ashwing. Her banner bore a pale, skeletal drake coiling around a silver crescent moon, rendered in ghostly hues. Born to the cold halls of Ghal Vharros, Sira rose to fame for orchestrating the ambush at the Iron Spires, where her calculated cruelty earned her both fear and reverence. Mean Yera said in company selection Sir Derek of the Black Veil fought defensively, creating walls of steel to protect others, and was known for dueling the dragon Murrakal in the rain, emerging from the battle near death but victorious. His personal banner depicted a black shroud draped over a silver helm, a symbol of stoic sacrifice. Derek's lineage was steeped in tragedy. A child of a ruined house, he swore oaths of silence after witnessing his family's slaughter, earning the epithet the Mourning Shield. Sir Varix the Fangless survived exile and arena combat before rejoining the vanguard, using reckless shock charges to break enemy lines. His duel with the armored worm Drovarn atop the Howling Cliffs remains legendary. His heraldry was brutal, a broken jawbone set against a field of scorched bronze. Once stripped of title for dishonor, Varix clawed his way back through bloodsport, his laughter on the battlefield as infamous as his fury. Dame Ilara of the Embervale was a feared assassin knight, specializing in night raids. Her most famous kill was the rogue dragon Maltharix, whom she slew with twin daggers while leaping from shadow to shadow in its lair. Her heraldry depicted twin daggers crossed before a dying ember on a blackened field. Ilara was raised by the shadowy whispering knives before pledging herself to Dreythal, her loyalty as sharp as her blades. Lord Garen the Hollow, a survivor of the Wyrmpyre eruption, fought with eerie silence, relying on psychological terror. He defeated the great drake, Vharros, by wading through its fire unflinching, striking its heart with a single devastating blow. His banner depicted a cracked helm, wreathed in ash, symbolizing death unyielding. Garen was disfigured by fire in his youth and forged himself into a living symbol of dread, his flesh and armor both scarred beyond recognition. The clash lasted 3 days and nights, and it is said the ashes still burn when the wind rises. To earn a place among them was to become the embodiment of Dreythal's defiance, not merely a slayer of dragons, but one who bent their fury into armor, mount, banner, and oath alike. The Wormgrave of Blighted Hollows. In this brutal campaign, the Worm Wardens held a defensive line in a drake-choked valley. Dame Corin the Shieldbreaker's tragic duel with the drake matriarch Sazra ended with her impaled, even as her Wyrmpyre pierced Sazra's eye. Epitaph, her shield broke, but her will did not. Ash and fang entwined. The Drakefire Campaign. Lord Howric Embervale's harrowing duel atop the molten battlements of Vale Drakahal with Thoris the Inferno Worm ended as both fell into the caldera below. Epitaph. In fire he ruled, in flame he fell. Wormlord of Ash. The Hunt of Dragonspire Crags. Sir Revan Stonehand's Wyrmpyre shattered mid-charge against the ironhide of the Drake Gorathar. He fought on foot, delivering a fatal throat slash before falling. Epitaph. His hand of stone, his will draconic, first to charge, last to fall. The Shadowflight War. Commander Valen of the Falling Skies' duel with the Drakekin warlord Vharros played out amid lightning and fog. Both fell. Valen never recovered. Epitaph. The sky claimed him, as did Shadow, Spear, and Wing. The Siege of Emberworm Crag. Captain Alira Emberhand fell after slaying 3 drakes in one night, dragging her fallen drake Silwraith beyond the flames before succumbing beside it. Epitaph. She burned as she lived, claw and flame, heart of ash. The Battle of the Pyre of Red Worms. Sir Caelion the Red's final duel with the Ash Knight ended in mutual death. Epitaph. His verse ended in blood. Red of scale, red of ruin. Dame Ciri the Ashen trapped 5 drakes, but fell to burning debris. Epitaph. A shadow's mind, a worm hunter's heart, she counted the flames. Sir Derek of the Black Veil fell, shielding comrades from a final worm charge. Epitaph. Shieldbearer, Oathkeeper, last wall of the Worm Guard. Varix the Fangless led a suicidal charge before Drakefire consumed him. Epitaph. Laughing in flame, no fangs but fury. Ilara of the Embervale vanished in smoke. Epitaph. Seen in shadow, vanished in worm smoke, daggers speak her name. Lord Garen the Hollow immolated himself atop Ashrax. Epitaph. Ash to ash, flesh and drake one flame. In its prime. Overview. Asa. At the ossuary apex of its baleful dominion, the kingdom of Dreythal was no mere nation, but a sepulchral citadel empire, ossified atop cairns of vanquished dragons and butchered sovereigns. Its walls were sculpted not from inert stone, but from the ossuary remains of elder drakes, bleached to a ghastly pallor and inscribed with hexagrammatic sigils to defy the entropy of time and siege alike. Each keep unfurled banners saturated in the clotted ichor of slain worms and the blazon of House Vharros. A white dragon weeping sanguine tears was a herald of dread from ice-choked tundras to sweltering desert wastes. Dreythal's nobility, scarred, mutilated, twisted by the tolls of their blood-soaked legacy. Many bearing seared flesh, amputated limbs replaced with engraved iron prostheses, faces partially masked by ceremonial steel to conceal disfigurements earned in ritual combat or dragon fire. Were not rulers but incarnations of grim duty and hereditary violence, dragon slayers consecrated by pyre and steel. Their legitimacy, a harrowing inheritance, demanded passage through ordeal. No crown could be borne upon an unburnt brow, no throne occupied save by one who had wrestled death from draconic sinew and bone. Its laws, harsh, unflinching, and blood-scribed, were set in the concord of Vrizilith, a tome stitched in flensed dragonhide, whose brutal decrees elevated lineage and martial severity above all else. Vrizilith itself was no mere beast, but the primeval progenitor of all worms, a vast, labyrinthine serpent whose iridescent scales reflected the sickly glow of moons long devoured by its shadow. Said to coil around the roots of the world, its breath birthed both flame and entropy, and its blood, harvested in ancient hunts, was black as night and corrosive to mortal flesh. Legends whispered that Vrizilith's mind was a chasm of prophecy and malice, a vault of unknowable designs that seeped into Dreythal's codex, making its decrees as venomous and immutable as the beast's own will. The influence of Vrizilith, woven into cultic superstitions whispered in rusting keeps, ossuaries heavy with drakebone dust, scarred relics that wept black resin, permeated every facet of Dreythali culture. Festivals of flame and blood commemorated ancient hunts where ancestors battled the beast's kin beneath ash-choked skies. Children of noble bloodlines were anointed at birth with ceremonial wounds, fine, deliberate cuts across the palms, so their first scar would bind them to the memory of Rizalith's endless coils. Smiths forged armor etched with Ouroboros designs, their helmets wrought in the image of draconic skulls, while artists sculpted effigies of Rizalith, entwining the world's bones in cathedrals of bone and rust. Even their language bore its mark. Curses, blessings, and proverbs coiled with references to fang and flame, scale and shadow. The Concord detailed punishments both grotesque and exemplary: traitors walled alive within hollowed dragon skulls, cowards ritually blinded with wyrmbone shards, and failed heirs immolated atop ancestral cairns. Yet even in ruin, Dreythal's legacy festers in grim shadows. Exiled scions such as Yarvik, the Shadow Spear, a cadaverous wraith clad in scale-corrupted armor, his gaunt frame crowned by a crown of old scars, wander cursed and restless. His weapon, Nocturnus Talon, fashioned from an elder dragon's talon, speaks in murmurs of madness and war, its eldritch pallor a reminder that Dreythal's rot endures. But Yarvik is not alone. Remnants of his lineage persist as scattered, feral warbands, each warrior steeped in draconic culture, clad in scaled relics, their flesh branded with Ouroboros scars. Among them strides Cyrene of House Amphitheatre, a vision of eldritch pallor and serpentine ornament. Her flesh pale and marred by ritual scars, her lacquered scale armor etched with rusted Ouroboros sigils. Helm wrought in the brutal likeness of a coiled worm's maw, a spearwoman of serpentine grace and grim poise. Her looks are haunting, her skin pale and almost luminous, crisscrossed with old ritual scars in the shape of fangs and coils. Her long, dark hair woven with scales and tiny bells that chime like distant serpent hisses. Her eyes, an unsettling shade of molten amber, seem to flicker with predatory calculation. Her armor is a masterpiece of lacquered amphitheatre scale, each plate etched with curling Ouroboros sigils, designed to flow with her movements like a second serpentine skin. Her helm, shaped like an unfurling worm's maw, conceals half her face, leaving a cruel smile exposed. Her weapon, Whisperfang, is a barbed lance, forged from the twin fangs of river drakes, venom steeped and etched with runes that sing faintly when drawn through the air. As a child, Cyrene was raised amid a coiling menagerie of amphipteres, trained from her earliest days to weave between the strikes of venomous serpents and to bleed without flinching. Her childhood was a crucible of cruelty, where affection was measured by scars endured and loyalty tested by blood spilled. This shaped her into a creature of fluid cruelty and detached grace. Cyrene's personality is a cold enigma. She speaks rarely, and then only in sharp, clipped phrases weighted with barbed irony. Her worldview is steeped in fatalism. She believes all bonds are ultimately venomous, and that trust is a coil waiting to tighten. Her psychological scars run deep. Beneath her poised exterior churns a morass of paranoia and suppressed grief, manifesting in restless rituals of self-discipline and sudden, lethal fury. Exiled after leading a purge that saw her kin's rivals impaled on obsidian pikes and fed to her house's own amphipteres, she now wanders as a solitary huntress, a living testament to the venomous legacy of House Amphitheatre. Maldrak the Dragon Eater stands as a creature shaped by warped legacy and consequence. Driven by a twisted code where conquest is appetite and kinship is prey, his very flesh a testament to ruin, as a hulking ruin of a man, last scion of the fallen house of the Obsidian Lords, a house infamous for forging monstrous weapons from the petrified bones of ancient worms. Maldrak's appearance is monstrous, towering and broad. His skin is coarse and darkened, marred by old cauterized wounds and layered with crude tattoos depicting the sigils of fallen Drake clans. His face is a brutal mask of scar tissue and ritual brands, his eyes sunk deep beneath a heavy brow, glinting with predatory hunger. His armor is an abomination of welded dragon bone and tarnished iron, each plate pitted and scored from countless battles. The helm he wears resembles a drake's skull split down the center and bound to his cranium with rusted iron rivets. His colossal sword, Charnel Gorge, is forged from the fused spines of 5 worms, its edge chipped and jagged, perpetually blackened by venom and ash. Maldrak's childhood was one of isolation and pitiless conditioning. Kept in the black vaults beneath his family's keep, fed on charred marrow, and taught to dismember drake hatchlings before he could walk. The elders of House Obsidian Lord believed that cruelty was both legacy and nourishment, a creed that left Maldrak a creature of bottomless hunger. His personality is brutish yet calculating. He speaks in guttural fragments, often muttering the names of his kills like a prayer. His worldview is simple but grimdark. Strength is consumption, conquest is appetite, and all things, including kin, exist to be devoured. Maldrak suffers from profound compulsions. He is unable to leave the corpse of any beast he slays unviolated, compelled to consume something of its flesh or blood. His dreams are plagued by visions of Vrizalith itself, goading him to sate an endless hunger. Maldrak wanders the wastes as a living embodiment of Dreythal's most gluttonous and predatory legacy. Both figures embody Dreythal's twisted inheritance, wandering as avatars of ruin and relics of a blood-cursed creed. Caelthra of House Morkai is a gaunt shield maiden whose visage is striking and severe. Pale, gaunt cheeks hollowed by hardship, a mane of tangled black hair streaked with ash gray, and cold eyes that gleam like frost on basalt. Her bone-plated mail is fashioned from wyvern ribs and vertebrae, each segment lacquered and inscribed with sacrificial litanies. Her twin axes, Talonstrike and Gorehook, are forged from wyvern talons, wickedly curved and permanently stained by ancient drake blood.
Caelthra's childhood was spent beneath the shadowed rafters of Morkai's basalt halls, where wyvern broods nested and shrieked. She was raised on marrow broth and ash bread, taught that suffering was kin to strength. Her personality is iron-willed and unsparing. Loyalty to her kin defined her, but exile twisted that loyalty into bitter pragmatism. Her worldview is steeped in grim honor. She believes a warrior's legacy is measured only in scars and defiance. Her psychological burdens are deep. She is haunted by the failure to save her kin at the doomed Weeping Crag, where she bore the brunt of drake fire that scarred her body in coiling wing shapes. Nightmares of that inferno fuel her relentless discipline and refusal to yield. Caelthra roams as a living monument to defiance and bitter remembrance. Varric the Blue-Blooded, scion of the blighted House Drethmore, is a pale and towering figure, his skin deathly and veined with unnatural blue, a byproduct of tinctures and alchemical venoms infused into his blood since infancy. His face is mask-like and serene, framed by braided locks of white hair adorned with drake teeth charms. He rides a monstrous drakehound stitched together from the carcasses of lesser beasts, a grotesque mount whose patchwork hide oozes of viscous blue secretion. Varric's armor is an alchemical horror. Lacquered bone and scaled leather, reinforced by steel rivets and etched with esoteric sigils of preservation and pain. His polearm, the Maulance, bears a macabre drake jawbone as its head, its serrated fangs preserved in eternal venom. As a child, Varric was subjected to brutal alchemical experiments by his kin, molded into a vessel for their heretical arts. His veins pulsing with blue poison, his senses sharpened but hollow. His personality is unnervingly detached. He speaks with eerie calm and cruel precision, as though weighing each word for its venomous efficacy. His worldview is steeped in fatalistic experimentation. All things are specimens awaiting dissection, and the flesh is merely a vessel for refinement and suffering. His psychological fractures are many: an inability to form bonds,
a compulsion to test limits, and an obsession with transforming pain into a kind of purity. Varroc's deeds, such as impaling an entire court upon a ruined temple's spires, are whispered in dread. For wherever he wanders, he becomes an architect of exquisite torment.
Shara the Coilbound, rogue priestess of the shattered House Thalasin, is a spectral and unsettling figure. Her flesh is pallid and slick with ritual oils, etched with inked scales that shimmer faintly in dim light. Her long hair is matted and adorned with bone charms, and her eyes glimmer with venomous malice beneath a circlet of serrated worm teeth. Her vestments are a patchwork of scaled vellum, stitched together from the flayed hides of drowned drakes, and her every movement is accompanied by the faint rustle of parchment and the dry rattle of bones. She bears no blade, for her weapon is poison itself, a caustic elixir distilled from the bile of ancient drakes, stored in glass vials that dangle from her belt like chimes. Her childhood was spent in the dim, damp catacombs of Thalassine, where she was initiated into esoteric rites of venom and shadow from infancy. Her upbringing was a relentless indoctrination in the mysteries of decay and disease, where faith and poison intertwined. Her personality is serpentine, oblique, languid, and sly, with an aura of unspoken threat. Ishara's worldview is that of entropy incarnate. All structures rot, all bonds corrode, and decay is the only true worship. Her mind is fractured by visions of drowning and suffocation, plagued by compulsions to spread sickness wherever she treads. She is remembered infamously for the massacre at the Vharros sepulchre, where she drenched ossuary halls in venom and captured the souls of her victims in delicate glass reliquaries she carries still. A ghost priestess whose presence heralds pestilence and doom. Some ride grotesque hybrid beasts, wyvern-blooded destriers or drakehounds bred in secret, and others bear weaponry forged from dragon bone and seared sinew, their lives an endless pilgrimage to reclaim lost honor or die in imitation of Vryzelith's fury. The collapse of the kingdom, a slow rot of paranoia, sorcery, internecine betrayal, and the bitter divides born of dragon horde raids and contested relics, has not silenced its influence. As dragons grew scarce and their hordes dwindled, Dreythal grew complacent and fractured, its nobility squabbling over relics instead of hunting the beasts that forged their dominion. But their fall is a tale for another time. Dreythali relics command fearsome reverence far from its bleak ruins, among desert warlords who drape themselves in sun-cracked dragonhide, in jungle sanctums where cultists burn offerings beneath shrines carved from the calcified remains of Dreythali knights, in coastal theocracies where priests interpret the stains on weathered Dreythali helms as auguries. Across Dreythal's empty, overgrown grassy plains stand the solemn remnants of its pride. Towering statues of famed members of both minor and major houses. Each statue is sculpted in uncanny detail, depicting warriors mid-strike, draped in ossuary regalia. Their helms carved in draconic visages, their faces immortalized in snarling defiance or cold contempt. Vines curl around their broken limbs, grasses grow wild between their cracked pedestals. And the eyes of some statues, once set with precious stones, now gape hollow, staring eternally across a kingdom that no longer kneels. These forgotten effigies, choked by moss and crowned by bird nests, speak silently of legacies claimed, defiled, and lost to time. Among them stand the statue of Lady Sereth of House Velkrin, carved in basalt and draped in stone serpents, her outstretched hand clutching a replica of the dragon heart she claimed in legend. Lord Valen of House Carnix, immortalized atop a cracked plinth, his stone armor flayed and adorned with grim trophies, his face weathered into an eternal sneer, and Sir Hadrath of House Morhol, depicted mid-swing with a two-handed axe,
his helm cast in the likeness of a drake's gaping maw. Each monument rises in solitude, encircled by wild grass and twisted thorns, their plaques bearing once proud inscriptions now corroded and barely legible. Among these grim sentinels stands the statue of Dame Ithrel of House Sablethorn, depicted seated upon a throne of drake bones, her face hidden beneath a heavy hood, her plaque etched, "May her silence endure longer than the dragons she felled." Near her looms Commander Drovak of House Braxel, encased in stone plate with his spear thrust into a carved dragon skull. His weathered plaque reads, "First through the flames, last to flee." The stern figure of Archon Halvek of House Wyrmpyre stands nearby, his statue draped in a heavy stone cloak, frozen mid-incantation. Beneath him the inscription declares, "Let frost preserve what fire cannot." These forgotten effigies stand in mute testament to a kingdom where glory was chiseled from scale, claw, and the brutal ledger of conquest.
Scattered among them are more forlorn figures. Lord Dravik of House Ironmaw, said to be the great-great-great-uncle of the famed founder of the pirate empire, the Iron Maw. Depicted in mid-roar, his statue bearing the scars of battle and an inscription nearly effaced, but reading faintly, "His rage split worm and kin alike." The lithe form of Lady Marith of House Thorncoil stands entwined with stone vines, her bare arms outstretched as if to welcome serpents. Her plaque reads, "Venom is loyalty, silence is mercy." Nearby rests the statue of General Corvin of House Emberwhite, armored in scale mail with a scorched banner draped over his back, his plaque etched, "May his embers never cool." These monuments, swallowed by grass and crowned by creeping ivy, speak of the minor and infamous houses whose ambitions, betrayals, and blood paid homage to Dreythal's draconic legacy. Among them can also be found the statue of Baroness Calreth of House Ashenfold, depicted kneeling on a bed of stone cinders, a dagger carved from a worm's fang at her throat. Her plaque reads, "She chose the blade before the chain." There stands Lord Harrick of House Gravemaul, sculpted in black marble, his colossal hammer resting across his shoulders, his plaque chipped and overgrown but faintly visible, "Breaker of Drakebone, burdened by silence." The hunched figure of Cirrus Ithra of House Valespire lurks nearby, draped in a hooded robe sculpted with dozens of tiny stone talons, her upturned face a mask of eyeless devotion. Her plaque reads, "She saw the last flame before the first shadow." These statues loom as weathered sentinels of houses long erased from living memory, their effigies devoured by wind, moss, and the indifference of time, yet their names carved defiantly in stone that refuses to crumble.
Across distant lands, grim prophets, blood-soaked zealots, and tarnished mercenaries invoke the spectral memory of House Vharros, a name synonymous with ruthless ascendancy, where power was a pyre built from shattered lineage and scorched flesh. The Chronicle of Tyrak Vharros, the Unbreakable Lord, whom Slavenesh affectionately nicknamed grandson of the last scale. Stone may crumble, dragons may burn, but Tyrak Vharros did neither. Annals of Ash, 18th year of Tyrak's reign. At the dawn of Dreythal's prime, when its citadels gleamed with the bleached bones of dragons, and every banner dripped with the blood of conquered worms, High Lord Tyrak Vharros reigned as the kingdom's unbreakable architect and ruthless sovereign. His name alone commanded silence in courts from the frozen north to the desert south, to the dwarven forge keeps below, the pirate and crabfolk coves in the west, and the Summerland Isles and Orchid Lands far, far east. His legend forged the spine of Dreythali culture and dragon hunting. What many did not know was his connection to one of the oldest elder dragons, Slavenesh, a name humans could pronounce, though its true name is said to be an impossible string of worm syllables lost to mortal tongues, written by some as Shira Ghal Vharros, a name that burns the throat and twists the mind of any human who attempts to speak it. Once the king of dragons, betrayed and savagely attacked by the rest of the Elder Dragon Council, its wings torn, a leg missing, and blind in one eye, crouched in a wet, dripping cavern whose walls wept with cold mist and despair. The air itself seemed to thrum with a suffocating, ancient sorrow, and shadows clung to every jagged stone, as if the cavern mourned its inhabitant. A heavy atmosphere of betrayal and ruin poisoned the air, seeping into the bones of any who dared approach. The betrayal itself was legend among worms. Slavenesh had once ruled as the first and greatest of their kind, establishing dragons as the unquestioned apex of the world's hierarchy, their dominion absolute over all mortal realms, shaping the very order of nations and peoples.
Kingdoms once paid tribute in gold, blood, and souls. Their laws bent around draconic decrees. Great cities rose only at the pleasure of the council, and mortal kings held thrones as vassals to wormkind. Every war, treaty, and succession bore the mark of draconic will, and no mortal life was untouched by their shadow. For the first 5 eras, the world belonged to dragonkind. The Morning Worm, the second oldest of their kind, presided as a grim arbiter during this dominion. But when that worm vanished, dragons ascended fully to the top of the world's hierarchy from the very beginning of recorded history. Entire kingdoms rose and fell beneath their wings. The kingdom of Aldros, once a jewel of the Western Isles, flourished under draconic patronage, building temples of bone and obsidian to honor their scaled masters. The empire of Cair, proud and defiant, was reduced to ash when it resisted tribute, its name stricken from maps by Wyrmpyre. The desert realm of Ithran endured only by dedicating every firstborn to dragon service, a tradition that lingered long after its sands swallowed its last palace. Aldros was renowned for its fleet of black-sailed ships, crewed by dragon-sworn mariners, their banners bearing the sigil of a coiled worm, while its priests offered sacrificial rites in sanctuaries carved from fossilized dragon bones. Cair, a militaristic empire famed for its obsidian fortresses, boasted legions trained in draconic combat doctrines, until their defiance led to annihilation. Ithran's great city of Zel-Karesh was crowned by a spire where chained hatchlings brooded, raised as living war engines. These kingdoms owed their greatness and their ruin to the shadow of dragonkind, whose reign twisted mortal ambition into either devotion or defiance. Heirs bore the mark of their father's betrayal, twisted into monstrous cruelty, and their names became synonymous with inevitable ruin. Their shadows darkened Aldros's last days, each appearance a herald of doom and burning. In the Battle of the Obsidian Shoals, Vezar the Ninth Eye, despite being a runt unable to breathe fire, unleashed terror with its demoralizing roar, causing Aldrosian mariners to falter in panic. It dove again and again into the fray, relying on the precision of its vicious bites and slashing claws to tear through rigging and warriors alike. Its roar alone shattered the resolve of entire companies, and though it could not burn ships with flame, it ripped their decks asunder with claw and tooth, leaving wreckage and drowned men in its wake. Drekath, the Coil Tyrant's fate,
was sealed during the Siege of Arkhal-Korath, when the citadel's last defenders, led by the mad priest lord Ghal Vharros, detonated cursed relics, burying the worm alive beneath molten stone. Maltharion the Shard-Eyed met his end in the ruin of the bone sanctuaries, where a conclave of desperate Aldraussian seers bound his fractured gaze in a mirror prison of obsidian and salt, entombing him forever in a labyrinth of shadow beneath the ruins. These final battles marked both the end of Aldros and the legacy of Slavenesh's brood, their monstrous cruelty etched into history alongside their fall. Legends born from the battle of the Obsidian Shoals spoke of ghostly mariners cursed to sail ash-swept seas under pale moons, their souls forever haunted by the Ninth Eye's roar. Survivors whispered that Vezar's shadow still darkens the waters, that any ship venturing too far west hears echoes of its terrible cry.
Aldraussian children chanted rhymes warning of Drekath's tightening coils slithering unseen in the night, and mad seers swore that Maltharion's gaze yet flickers in cracked mirrors, seeking to drive minds to ruin. These dark myths ensured that the terror of Slavenesh's brood outlived their deaths, woven into the nightmares and warnings of every generation that followed. The draconic yoke defined law, faith, and memory itself, and no age could be spoken of without reference to their reign, crowned king of dragons by claw and fire. Yet envy, fear, and ancient prophecy drove the Elder Dragon Council to treachery. In a moonless night of ash and storm, they descended upon him as one, a savage ambush where brother tore wing from brother, where their own king was crippled and cast down. The council sealed their betrayal with Wyrmpyre, cursing his name to history, even as his broken body vanished into exile beneath the world. To this day, echoes of their conspiracy haunt the Elder Dragon's lineages, and in dark circles some still whisper that Tyrak's line carries blood debt to the last true king of dragons. The dragon's scales were a deep purple, a dull slate hue, cracked and chipped, and its single remaining eye glowed like a dying violet ember, its cracked surface a labyrinth of ancient scars and fractures, the pupil a jagged slit swimming in pools of shadow and violet light, reflecting a millennium of sorrow, rage, and hunger, a window into a mind twisted by time and trauma. Those who dared meet this gaze found their will unraveling. Soldiers and hunters alike were said to stagger and fall to their knees, weeping or laughing madly, as visions of their deepest fears and failures flooded their minds. Even Tyrak himself, unbreakable in flesh and will, felt a tremor in his soul when first locked in that eye's glare, a fleeting moment of vertigo where the weight of ancient grief and predatory malice threatened to swallow him whole, before he mastered himself again. Beneath its emaciated frame lay no gleaming treasure, but a hoard of cursed coins and items, blades, charms, and relics once wielded by would-be slayers, each corrupted and rejected, forming a throne of malice and memory where Slavenesh rested in bitter solitude. He took an instant liking to the 11-year-old boy who had fallen into his cavern, and over 5 years together, Slavenesh shared ancient knowledge with Tyrak, teaching him the secrets of wormkind, how to slay his betrayers, and the true history of the Elder Dragon Council. In the end, as his final act of defiance, Slavenesh gave his remaining life force to the boy. To Tyrak, Slavenesh had become the grandfather he never knew, a mentor, protector, and the sole bearer of a brutal wisdom forged in betrayal. Their bond was one of quiet understanding,
both shaped by abandonment and treachery. This connection instilled in Tyrak a hatred for the dragons who had betrayed his grandfather, a hatred he carried until his last breath. In the shadows of that cavern, they shared long, quiet conversations. Slavenesh would rumble in his broken voice. "Little one, there is no honor among those who wear crowns of flame." And Tyrak would sit at his clawed feet, nodding solemnly. As Tyrak matured, he reflected on the cavern as both tomb and cradle, a place where his true life had begun. He learned the patient silence of predators, the weight of betrayal, and the cold calculus of vengeance. On nights when his mind darkened with rage, Slavenesh would say, "Temper your hate, Tyrak. Let it sharpen, not consume." Tyrak would murmur in return, "I will carve their names in blood for you, grandfather," his resolve hardening with each passing year. Together they watched the slow drip of water on stone, the curling mist that coiled like ghostly worms, and in that isolation, Tyrak forged his identity, shaping himself in Slavenesh's image, a creature of scarred wisdom and cold resolve. In teaching Tyrak, Slavenesh shared not just knowledge, but a vision, a legacy of vengeance forged in betrayal and loss, mirrored in the boy's own hunger for purpose and belonging. Now imbued with the strength of the First Lord and burdened with ancient knowledge, Tyrak emerged from the cavern transformed, his soul forged in sorrow, vengeance, and a loyalty that transcended blood, a man who would shape history forever in Slavenesh's name. The throne itself was a ghastly sculpture, swords twisted into jagged angles, shields dented and dark with dried gore, amulets cracked and engraved with curses, all fused together into a grotesque baroque structure dripping with ancient rot. The cursed coins, blackened and etched with hateful runes, seemed to bleed shadows that writhed along the cavern floor. Rusted helms crowned its jagged edges like macabre laurels, their eye slits weeping trails of black ichor. Shattered bones protruded from between the relics, the remnants of would-be slayers whose corpses had been absorbed into the throne itself, a grim ossuary of failure and fury. This was no mere hoard. It was a monument to ruin, a shrine to hopelessness, radiating a chill that gnawed at the soul. Tyrak met this ancient worm after he slipped into a gorge while fevered from an elk hunt, encountering the wounded creature in one of the kingdom's most dangerous forgotten wilds. Appearance and presence. Tyrak was a giant among men, nearly 7 feet tall, shoulders like stone battlements, pale flesh marked by the scars of countless battles, and dark eyes as cold as iron, locked in permafrost. His hair, worn long and streaked silver even in youth, hung like a banner down his back, and his voice was low and unyielding, a sound like earth grinding beneath a glacier. In council he was a statue of severity, clad in his signature armor, grave hide, forged from the scales of 3 elder worms, blackened and lacquered until it gleamed obsidian. Around his neck hung a heavy chain bearing one of Slavenesh's claws, a grim talisman and testament to his love for the dragon who had become his grandfather, and a reminder of the betrayal that had shaped his hate and purpose. His great axe, known as Grief Fang, was wrought from one of Slavenesh's own claws and fused with blackened wyrmbone. Tyrak wielded it effortlessly with one hand, its haft wrapped in scorched hide, and its broad blade etched with runes of sorrow and vengeance. When unsheathed, it hummed with a low, mournful resonance, a weapon that was both a reminder of Tyrak's love for his fallen grandfather and a testament to his eternal hatred of the betrayer dragons. The only tears Tyrak ever shed were when Slavenesh gave his life force, leaving him alone in that cavern, and again when he first raised Grieffang, hearing his grandfather's voice echo in his mind one last time.
The philosophy of the unbreakable.
Strength is truth. Blood is proof. Mercy is a lie. This triad became the doctrine of his reign.
Tyrak demanded that every noble heir prove their worth through the rite of the blood eagle, a brutal ordeal demanding a personal hunt, slaying, and the ritualistic consumption of the lungs of a draconic beast. The ritual itself was as gruesome as it was symbolic. The heir would carve open the beast's chest with bare hands, severing ribs to splay them wide like wings, exposing the still warm lungs. While the dragon's dying breath hissed from the torn cavity, the heir would tear the lungs free and devour them raw, blood streaming down their face and arms. This act was said to bind their flesh to the legacy of vengeance, proving that they had inherited not merely title, but Tyrak's unyielding hatred and iron resolve. Those who survived the rite of the Blood Eagle were forever changed. They became ravenous, fearless, and possessed of an unshakable will. The ritual's brutality forged an unbreakable bond among those who hunted together. Brothers and sisters in blood and agony. Dreythali culture came to revere these hardened nobles as paragons of ferocity and loyalty, their very bodies infused with draconic essence, their minds sharpened into instruments of conquest. Songs and grim tales celebrated their madness and courage, and common folk whispered that no force could turn a blood eagle heir from their path, once sworn. Among them were legends of Tyrak's own blood, Ghal Vharros, who cleaved the head from a sky serpent 3 times his size in a blizzard and dragged its steaming lungs behind him for 3 days through enemy territory, his war cry echoing the beast's death scream. Wyrmpyre the Iron-Eyed,
whose feast upon a crimson drake's lungs was said to turn her blood black and her gaze unflinching. She strode into battle without helm or shield, her presence alone enough to drive foes to surrender or madness. And Dagon the Hollow, whose silent journey into the cursed peaks became legend. He vanished for a year, returning with the lungs of 2 elder worms, their desiccated remains bound to his back, his skin carved with self-inflicted runes of mourning, his voice never heard again. These heirs did not merely complete the rite, they became living avatars of its savage creed, ravenous, fearless, and forever marked by blood and shadow. Each bore heraldry reflecting their legend. Corin's sigil was a white serpent's skull split down the center on a field of crimson, and he wielded Twin Vow, a paired battle axe with one edge jagged like a dragon's shattered tooth. Wyrmpyre the Iron-Eyed carried no shield but bore her house's standard, a single iron eye on a sable field, and her weapon, Grief Talon, was a glaive forged from drakebone and darkened steel. Dagon the Hollow's banner was a black field scarred with ash marks, and his blade, Mourner's Edge, was wrapped in funeral cloth. None of them broke, bent, or folded in the end. Corin fell upon a mountain pass surrounded by legions, his axes buried in his enemies. Wyrmpyre perished alone, standing atop a breach as a storm battered her body to ruin. Dagon was last seen striding into a pyre of cursed flame, silent and resolute.
Their deaths only deepened their legend.
Symbols of an unyielding will forged in blood, sorrow, and shadow. Upon their tombs were carved grim epitaphs. For Ghal Vharros, he who dragged death through blizzard and blood, never yielding. For Wyrmpyre the Iron-Eyed, her gaze broke men and storms alike, unbent and bare. And for Dagon the Hollow, silence was his weapon, flame his grave, and sorrow his name. These inscriptions ensured that their deeds would not fade, enshrining them as exemplars of Tyrak's brutal creed. Other heirs of the dark lineage were honored similarly. Vharros. His laughter was war, his shadow unbroken. Kaidor the Red. A blade in darkness, a storm in flesh, defiant in death. And Tyrak Vharros. She who bled, but never bent. Her heart was iron, her end was flame. Each epitaph carved into black stone, each name a testament to Dreythali resolve. None of them broke, bent or folded in the end. Their lives consumed in loyalty and violence. These heirs embodied the legacy of the Blood Eagle, ravenous, fearless, and bound forever to the doctrine of strength through blood and vengeance. A personal hunt and slaying of a dragon. Only those who returned with scale or tooth were permitted to inherit title or land. He outlawed foreign diplomacy except through conquest or vassalage. To him, parley was weakness given voice. Even his household reflected his philosophy. His sons and daughters were not raised as heirs, but as weapons. Their names etched in stone on the walls of Ghal Vharros, only after they earned the right to bear them. The Siege of Arkhal-Korath. His most famous campaign was the Siege of Arkhal-Korath, a bastion of dragon riders perched atop the volcanic caldera known as the Wyrmpyre. For 7 days and nights, Dreythal's hosts fought beneath skies torn by fire and wings, their lines nearly broken thrice. On the 8th dawn, when generals urged retreat, Tyrak stood before them, his face blackened by soot, eyes burning with cold resolve. He spoke. "Any who do not fight shall have no home to return to, shall be damned, even in the next life, for abandoning their brothers and sisters. And know this, should you flee, I shall hunt and condemn you in this life and the next. No shadow shall hide you, no grave shall hold you safe." His generals, hardened men of war, fell silent. One dared speak, a scarred veteran named Malric, voice trembling despite years of battlefield valor. "My lord, the cliffs burn and the skies bleed. We are spent. Even the bravest falter." Tyrak's gaze pinned him, sharp as a blade's edge. "Then die spent, Malric. But die as Dreythali." A hush fell, and in that moment, every soldier felt their souls weighed and measured by Tyrak's fury. Some wept quietly, their tears streaking soot-stained cheeks, while others gripped their blades as if fearing judgment itself. A few sank to one knee in silent vow, muttering prayers to ancestors and lost comrades. The younger soldiers looked to the ground, ashamed of their doubt, while veterans bowed their heads in grim resolve, haunted by memories of lesser lords who would have fled, but knowing this man, their lord, would not. A raw shiver ran through the host, dread, awe, and a terrible pride that hardened their resolve like steel tempered in fire. Then he donned no helmet, his face already pale beneath soot and streaked with blood from fresh wounds. An ugly gash split his brow, dark blood crusting his cheek, and one eye nearly swollen shut. His beard was matted with ash and sweat, and his cracked lips drew tight in a grimace of iron will. His armor hung in tatters, dented and scorched, with broken clasps exposing torn flesh beneath. One arm dangled slightly, bound hastily with a scorched leather strap to staunch bleeding from a deep shoulder wound. His breath came ragged, but his eyes burned bright above that battered visage, fierce and unyielding. The soldiers recoiled at the sight, not in disgust, but in awe and guilt, for their lord bore wounds that would have felled 10 men. Yet he rose and strode forward. Some sobbed openly, falling to their knees. Others beat shields and breastplates in desperate tribute as he passed. Among them, Old Sergeant Corvin thought. How does he stand when I can barely kneel? A young spearman whispered to himself. He bleeds more than any of us, yet he leads. Another, gripping his sword tight enough to whiten knuckles, muttered aloud, If he dies today, I shall follow him into the fire itself.
A grizzled archer who had fought a dozen campaigns choked back tears and called out hoarsely, By the blood of our fathers, we march behind you, Lord Tyrak.
A standard-bearer, barely 16, clutched the Dreythali banner so tightly his nails split and whispered, Let me carry it after him if he falls. An older cavalryman, missing an eye and half an ear, murmured, May the worms see his ruin in those wounds before this day is done. A wounded pikeman, leg-bound in makeshift splints, hissed through clenched teeth, Better to die on these cliffs than shame ourselves before him. A weathered captain, standing silent, finally spoke. Look well upon him, for we will never see his like again. Their thoughts were shared but unspoken, their voices hushed but burning, as their battered, exhausted hearts surged with terrible pride and fearful love for the man who would not fall. And that pride spread like fire through the ranks, igniting something deeper. Helmets were thrown aside as soldiers lifted bare heads to the ash-filled sky in defiance. Broken shields were raised high, splintered but resolute. Wounded men dragged themselves upright, leaning on spears and comrades alike. A chant began at the rear, soft at first but rising, a single word, Tyrak, Tyrak, Tyrak. It spread from throat to throat until the whole army roared his name as a vow. Those who doubted found their fears drowned in that chorus. Those who faltered felt strength return to aching limbs. And when Tyrak began his ascent, the Dreythali host rose behind him, not to flee, but to stand as one, even at the edge of ruin. He took Wyrmpyre in hand and climbed the ash-choked cliffs alone. Witnesses said he did not speak nor look back as he ascended, molten stone cracking beneath his boots, the trail of his blood hissing where it fell. There, atop the caldera, he confronted Wyrn, dragon lord of Arkhal-Korath, a figure clad in gold and crimson scale, mounted upon a crimson drake called Wyrmpyre. Their duel raged for 7 hours, a brutal contest that seemed to defy mortal endurance. In the first hour, Wyrn's drake swept the skies, raining flame, and Tyrak answered each dive with impossible speed, despite his wounds. By the third hour, molten stone flowed around them as their weapons sparked against scale and steel. In the fifth hour, Tyrak fought half-blind, his swollen eye sealed shut, his sword arm bleeding freely, yet his grip did not falter. Soldiers below watched in horrified awe, flinching with every thunderous impact that sent cascades of ash and fire down the caldera. By the seventh hour, both combatants were bloodied and burned, the very ground around them blackened and cratered. Each clash sent shockwaves down the mountain. The air filled with fire and smoke, the earth itself trembled. At last, Tyrak severed Wyrn's head with a single final stroke, then slew Wyrmpyre, tearing free the dragon's spine to forge the hilt of Wyrmpyre itself. As he kneeled from exhaustion, bleeding heavily over their corpses, an exhausted smile crept across Tyrak's battered face, as if whispering in his mind, "Can you see, Slavenesh? Your grandson loves you." This thought mattered deeply, for Slavenesh had been the only soul in Tyrak's brutal youth who showed him kindness, the elder whose lessons of defiance and honor had shaped the iron core of his spirit. Though long dead, Slavenesh's shadow loomed large in Tyrak's heart, and in this moment of blood and fire, Tyrak felt that his victory was not only for his people, but a tribute to the one who had believed he could become more than cruelty's child. He planted the Dreythali banner in Varen's cooling corpse, and the warriors of Arkhal-Korath threw down their arms.
This act cemented Tyrak's legend. The man who slew a dragon lord and his beast in single combat, and took their bones as crown and sword alike. In the aftermath, Tyrak was crowned with a title he himself founded, the High Dragoon, an ancient rank within Dreythal's lore, reserved for only those who had slain at least 3 elder dragons in single combat. Throughout history, only 4 warriors would ever bear this title. Tyrak himself, his first son, Ghal Vharros, and 4 centuries later, his towering 19th great-great-great-great-granddaughter, Silvana, a 7-foot-tall warrior woman, blind in one eye, who wielded a mighty claw hammer. Silvana, and the one who bore the dread spear Nocturnus Talon, known as Yarvik the Shadow Spear. Deathless legacy. Tyrak never died in battle nor of sickness. In the 92nd year of his rule, his appearance was mythic, a scarred monument to war and legend. His once mighty frame, gaunt yet unbowed, seemed carved from ancient stone, skin like weathered parchment stretched taut over sinew as unyielding as tempered steel. His beard, a tangled cascade of ash gray and soot black, flowed down to his breastplate, now more reliquary than armor. Deep lines etched his face as if carved by the very winds of war, one eye lost and replaced with a hollow scar blackened by time, yet the other still burned, a cold, fierce glint that could unnerve even the bravest. His hands were gnarled and calloused, fingers twisted from old breaks, their knuckles swollen but curled in eternal readiness, veins like roots of an ancient tree. Cloaked in draconic scales, dulled and cracked, crowned with a helm fashioned from the fused skulls of 3 elder dragons, his very silhouette radiated a terrible glory. The mantle of the High Dragoon draped from his shoulders, tattered but heavy, with golden embroidery depicting every dragon he had slain. Even seated, he exuded the raw dominance of a living myth, a being whose presence alone spoke of conquest, agony, and immortality. It is said that he simply sat the throne of the High Dragoon, encased around a small moat of ever-flowing elder dragon blood, removed his crown, and willed himself into deathless stillness. Though no one would ever know, in his final moments Tyrak saw a huge purple dragon claw reach from the heavens, and he heard Slavenesh say, "You have done me proud, my grandson. Come now, I yearn to hear of all your deeds and feats. It is time to rest from your long journey." And Tyrak, weary and battered, thought of his time as a boy with Slavenesh, those fleeting moments of kindness and fierce lessons, and he smiled, closing his eyes for the final time, returning in spirit to that cavern of his youth, where the waters trickled on the stones and the moonlight danced, and his grandfather's voice was strong and near once more. Chroniclers insist that his flesh turned to stone, and that his eyes, cold, sharp, and knowing, still watched the Hall of Judgment in Ghal Vharros. He still instilled fear in all far and wide in the world, and even 163 years after his passing, none dared go near his lands, not believing he had truly died. To this day, it is whispered that every Dreythali ruler who sits the throne of the Scale Eater feels the weight of Tyrak's gaze, their judgment not by counsel or decree, but by the cold stone that once was their unbreakable lord. Where Yarvik later wandered a haunted kingdom reduced to ash and memory, Tyrak's Dreythal was alive. A citadel empire of conquest, fear, and pride, where dragons died and kings did not kneel. A kingdom unyielding, forged in scale and scar,
ruled by the man who could not break. Inscription on the wall of the Unbreakable, in the ruins of Dreythal. The people and culture. In Dreythal, every soul, noble or low-born, woman or man, was shackled to the art of war. For combat was creed, and ruin the only inheritance. It was a kingdom where neither coin nor bloodline could purchase esteem. Only the slaying of draconic behemoths inscribed one's name into the grim ledger of legend. Thus did Tyrak decree, skill the sole currency, the hunt the only prayer. The Dreythali bore the aspect of their unforgiving realm. Scar-seamed visages, flesh bronzed and blistered by mountain sun and forge blaze, hair woven into ferrous braids laced with bone charms, their eyes, glinting like embers, glimpsed in cavernous gloom. Tyrak's empire sprawled like a wound upon the land, its great cities each a bastion of brutal purpose and consequence. Veltharin, the stone-walled heart of the realm, was the grim throne of power where governance dripped with sweat and blood. Its soot-blackened towers sagged under banners of cured dragonhide, and its streets echoed with the clangor of tribunals and the toll of execution bells. Veltharin's iron halls bore the weight of Dreythal's law, unforgiving and absolute. Cardraveth, a cliff-buried crucible of fire and ore, was the industrial soul of the empire, where molten rivers churned beneath vaulted stone, and the walls themselves wept rust. Here, the forges birthed every spearhead and breastplate that armed Tyrak's legions. No anvil rang more true, no fires burned more fervid than those of Cardraveth, where craftsmen's oaths were sealed in sweat and iron. Skarn's reach, perched precariously at the edge of the world where ocean mists devoured stone, was the vigilant eye of Dreythal, its port and gateway to foreign shores. Its garrison kept watch not for trade, but for threats, raiders, beasts, and ghosts from across the dark waters. Its fog-snarled streets were haunted by salt-rimmed warriors and spies, whose allegiances were as mutable as the tides. Each city, a necropolis of iron, ash, and consequence, bespoke a people forged in loss and ruthlessness, a culture where history itself was engraved upon despoiled stone and dragonbone relics. Blacksmiths and miners alike were venerated as sanctifiers of steel and stone, their forges and mines cathedrals of soot and sanctimony. Without their ruthless toil, no warrior could dare aspire to glory, to hammer a spearhead from calcined dragonbone, or delve for ore in the abyssal deeps was sacrament, each spark a benediction, each hammer blow an invocation to power. Tyrak himself would descend into these umbral sanctums, swathed in ash and sweat, drinking deeply, recounting grim tales, and working shoulder to shoulder with his artisans when not astride the hunt. Foremost among these ironclad souls were Rhaegar Ironhand, Forge Master, and Malric Stonevein, Head Miner, Tyrak's oldest companions, bound by chthonic fraternity and hardship, both sprung from the moldering hamlet of Vaelthir's Hollow. Their camaraderie was the bedrock of empire, stalwart, dolorous, immutable. Rhaegar, blunt as a warhammer and fierce as forge flame, laughed like breaking iron, burned with a volatile temper, yet his loyalty ran deeper than any vein of ore. Through long, brutal nights, he and Tyrak debated the geometry of death at the anvil, only to wield their creations in carnage at dawn. Malric, a brooding titan of earth and silence, moved and spoke with the slowness of tectonic will. His patience was a glacier, his counsel a chisel's measured stroke. He charted the veins of rock and ore with uncanny acuity, and when Tyrak faltered, it was Malric's granite calm that tempered his fury. Their loyalty to Tyrak was not forged of crowns or privilege, but annealed in shared deprivation. Gruel eaten in shadow, knives honed in poverty, and dreams kindled in the umbra of forgotten woods. To them, Tyrak's vision, a crucible where only strength and cunning might ascend, was not tyranny, but apotheosis. In council and at the hearth, these grim brothers were Tyrak's iron bulwark. In war they labored unsleeping, ensuring that Dreythal's legions bore weapons as merciless as their spirits. It was whispered that no circlet of gold adorned Tyrak's brow more proudly than the unwavering faith of these two revenant comrades. The Dreythali lived within a rigid lattice of purpose, ordained not by lineage but by brutal merit. Only those who had drenched blade in dragon's blood commanded. Only those whose hammers rang truest shaped arms. Only those who tamed the land's rot tilled its fields. Fields where the bones of ancestors nourished twisted roots, and the wind hissed old betrayals across blood-fed soil. The dragon-hunting orders, the Hollow Order, later reduced to scattered zealots night in Yarvik's day, was then the most feared and respected martial brotherhood in the known world. Their leader council at the time, known as the Black Circle, was composed of 7 grand marshals, each a veteran of 100 dragon wars, who governed with iron discipline and a zeal for purity. Grand Marshal Veyrin Bloodhelm. Once a simple blacksmith's apprentice from the hamlets of northern Dreythal, Veyrin earned his name by forging his own armor from the melted scales of a drake that killed his entire village. His rise was fueled by raw hatred and unmatched skill in single combat, culminating in his legendary duel with the Crimson Worm of Kharos. High Seeress, Malthisa Veilbind. Born into the secluded cult of the Veiled Eye, Malthisa was blinded as a child during a failed dragon summoning rite. The Order rescued her, recognizing her ability to foresee draconic movements in dreams. Her cold, cryptic counsel shaped many of the Order's purges. General Knight Draven Ashma, a brutal enforcer from the Dreythali borderlands. Draven was rumored to have hunted his first dragon at age 15 with nothing but a spear carved from elderwood. His grim reputation was cemented by the massacres at Ashen Reach. Dame Serral Kelthorn, a mute prodigy from the cloisters of Black Bastion. Serral lost her voice during an assassination attempt in her youth. She rose through the ranks by mastering silent command, orchestrating flawless battlefield tactics that won nearly every siege she led. Master Artificer Korvald Drakesunder. Descended from a disgraced line of alchemists, Korvald redeemed his family name through innovation, pioneering weapons infused with dragonbone and blood. His creations made the Order's arsenal unmatched. Warden Velkan Dreth, son of a disgraced noble house, Velkan was raised in the bleak halls of Black Bastion itself. Hardened by isolation, he became the fortress's most stalwart defender, overseeing its brutal initiation trials and maintaining its grim reputation as the heart of the Order. Lord Penitent Tyrak Vharros. Once a scholar priest obsessed with draconic heresies, Tyrak scarred his flesh with symbols of penance after surviving an encounter with a void drake. His fervor led him to become the Order's executioner and moral enforcer, presiding over its darkest rites. Clad in armor lacquered black with dragon blood, and wielding weapons crafted from claw and scale, the Order marched not only to conquer but to cleanse, viewing dragons as divine adversaries to be slain, dissected, and studied. Their training halls echoed with chants and draconic, and their initiation rites included the drinking of dragon blood, a practice believed to imbue them with enhanced senses and longevity, but known also to twist minds with obsession. They were masters of the dragon wars during the Age of Ash, holding sway across the high citadels of Dreythal and beyond. Each knight bore the sigil of the Black Spiral, a mark of both honor and warning. Upon their gauntlets and banners, declaring their eternal vigilance against the scaled gods. It was said their libraries brimmed with tomes bound in drakehide, detailing the anatomy, breathcraft, and ancient bloodlines of dragons across the continents. Their forges rang night and day, crafting spears tipped with alchemically tempered dragon bone and shields that shimmered with slivers of draconic scale. But with mastery came arrogance, and in time the Hollow Order grew blind to the curse that seeped from the very blood they consumed. The corruption crept first through their leaders, the Black Circle itself, twisting their judgment and sowing suspicion, betrayal, and cruelty within the council. Petty rivalries turned into blood feuds, and decrees of purity became pretexts for internal purges. As centuries passed, madness and zealotry hollowed their ranks until they became a fractured shadow of their former glory, consumed from within as much as from their endless wars. By Yarvik's era, they were no longer a disciplined brotherhood but scattered fanatics, haunted by their ancestors' legacy, desperate, dangerous, and driven by a fading dream of purity through dragon slaying. Their black lacquered armor rusted, their rituals corrupted, their chants mere echoes of forgotten power. Yet, in their prime, none could stand before them. The Hollow Order, dragon slayers without peer, whose name alone once made even the mightiest worm tremble.
House Vharros, in its zenith.
Lord Tyrak Vharros, reigning 480 years after the High Dragoon Tyrak, the legendary Wyrmbreaker whose campaigns against the Elder Drakes reshaped the fate of Dreythal, and whose legacy Merrick sought to surpass. He reignited the fervor of the Empire, massing new dragon raids and founding the feared Muddrakes, a specialized unit for underground hunting, ensuring that not even the deepest lairs could shelter the dragons, sat the ancestral throne. A cold, calculating ruler, Merrick's court was infamous for its intrigue and paranoia, even in prosperity. The Muddrakes were a grim brotherhood of tunnelers and slayers, their armor caked in alchemical mud to repel heat and stifle scent, their faces often streaked with soot, scar tattoos, and crude piercings of wyrmbone. Many among their number came from the ruined mining city of Varsh-Kor, destroyed in a catastrophic dragon attack. The surviving miners, hardened by loss and driven by vengeance for loved ones buried in collapsed shafts, joined the new unit in droves, bringing with them an instinctive knowledge of stone and tunnel. Above ground, they cultivated a loud, drunken, brash culture, known for raucous feasts, bawdy songs echoing through the halls of Ghal Vharros, and brawling in taverns with reckless abandon. Yet when called to hunt, they transformed utterly, shedding all noise and bravado, becoming disciplined and terrifyingly focused. They operated by torchless dark, guided by whisper and tremor, and wielded hooked pikes and incendiary burrowing charges designed to collapse warrens and incinerate sleeping worms in their nests. Their motto, no den too deep, no beast too hidden. Entire underground ecosystems were scoured clean under their ruthless campaigns. Their banner bore the image of a powder keg strapped to the back of a snarling dragon, a symbol of volatile ferocity and destruction. In their bawdy songs and drunken revelry, the Muddrakes took pride in this emblem. But when on the hunt, that same symbol served as a grim reminder that they were explosives in human form, unpredictable above ground, precise and deadly in the dark. Captain Vanjarn Mud-Eye, a one-eyed veteran infamous for dragging the skull of a wyrmling behind him on a rusted chain. His uncanny sense for underground tremors became legendary. His leadership was harsh but deeply respected. He drilled his squads relentlessly, demanding absolute silence and discipline underground. Mud-Eye punished hesitation with exile from the unit, but rewarded valor with personal recognition, awarding small tokens carved from wyrmling bone. He led from the front, often the first to crawl into collapsing tunnels and the last to leave a sealed warren. In council, his presence was laconic but commanding, his tactical plans marked by ruthless precision
and perfect knowledge of subterranean geography. He was known to pace the tunnels barefoot to sense vibrations himself, memorizing the texture of every chamber. Mud-Eye demanded drills in complete darkness for days at a time, teaching recruits to listen to the bones of the earth. His ability to inspire fear and loyalty in equal measure made him the iron spine of the Mud Drakes. Among his most quoted orders was, "If the stone can breathe, so can we, but only if we keep our breath quiet." Another saying attributed to him was, "The mud swallows noise first, then blood."
Tyrak Vharros, Mudmother, whose scarred arms bore tally marks for each nest destroyed. She innovated the use of smoke bombs infused with paralytic spores, and personally trained every muddrake under her command in the arts of subterranean warfare. Her brutal regimen included blindfolded crawls through flooded tunnels, navigating by breath and vibration alone, and skinning cave lurkers bare-handed as a rite of passage. Vharros' doctrine emphasized patience, psychological domination, and total environmental control, teaching that victory underground required mastering fear itself. In personal combat, Vharros was ruthless and precise, favoring a short, hooked blade designed to sever tendons and blind prey. She wore a mask of hardened mud that concealed her expression, unnerving foes and allies alike, and carried a chain of wormling fangs as grisly trophies of her early campaigns. Her legend spoke of duels fought waist-deep in subterranean pools, where she moved like a shadow through black water, striking before her victims even sensed her presence. Tactics. Silent breach. The Muddrakes would infiltrate sleeping warrens via narrow natural fissures,
Collapsing escape tunnels before launching sudden, overwhelming attacks.
Glimmer flooding. Alchemical powders ignited to suffocate and blind dragons before contact, creating shimmering clouds that reflected torchlight and disoriented prey. Whisper circles. Small squads worked in eerie silence, communicating only through coded taps on stone, moving with ghostly precision.
Infamous campaigns.
The Bleeding Deep, a brutal 7-year purge of the volcanic caverns beneath Varrock's spine,
Where 3 generations of fire drakes were eradicated. The mud drakes pioneered glimmer flooding here, igniting reflective alchemical dust to disorient worms in pitch darkness before collapsing magma tunnels. Survivors whispered of cavern walls, glowing with scorched mud runes left by the unit, as grim markers of their passage. Entire networks of natural vents were transformed into ashen chimneys, belching smoke for decades. Legends speak of Captain Mud-Eye himself descending alone into the lowest fissure, dragging out the corpse of a brood mother drake, her scales charred and cracked from relentless firebombing. The mud drakes sealed the deepest chambers with alchemical pitch, ensuring no worm could ever hatch there again. A brutal warning to all who would seek refuge beneath the spine.
The Ebenroot Collapse. Led by Tyrak Vharros, Mudmother herself, this devastating assault on a subterranean worm colony beneath the western marshes cemented her grim reputation. Vharros was known for her cold, deliberate leadership, favoring psychological warfare and total annihilation over swift strikes. Her voice was rarely raised, but every word carried an air of inevitability, her soldiers following her into depths where no light reached. During this campaign, she deployed glimmer smoke laced with hallucinogens to disorient worms before collapse charges were set, and she personally executed the worm matriarch of the colony, severing its head with a ceremonial mud-caked blade. The mud drakes filled the caverns with noxious glimmer smoke and set fire to the marsh roots, causing entire warrens to implode. The screams of trapped beasts echoed for days, and it is said the marshland above still exhales smoke on moonless nights. The Snipe Hunt. An obsessive, 9-month pursuit of a single elder worm
through the maze caverns of Dreythal. The mud drakes laid traps, baited with poisoned carcasses, and rigged entire caverns with detonations. The worm was finally cornered and slain beneath the obsidian vault. Its massive skull was dragged in chains to Ghal Vharros, where Merrick had it fashioned into his personal throne. His sons and daughters were polished instruments of Dreythal's ambition, paragons of martial honor and ruthless precision, each trained from childhood in the arts of war and statecraft. The eldest, Vaelric, commanded the fortress at Blackfen, a dour and meticulous warrior whose harsh discipline became legend among the border legions. The second, Lady Serene, was a master of intrigue and poison, weaving a web of spies through rival courts, her presence feared even where unseen. While the youngest twins, Cale and Corin, reckless and inseparable, led hunting parties into deep woods and shadowed caves, eager to earn their place among the muddrakes themselves. Vaelric was known for his unyielding sense of honor and cold pragmatism, Serene for her ruthless wit and penchant for subtle cruelty, Cale for his impulsive daring, and Corin for his quiet cunning. Each child embodied a facet of Merrick's ambition, their rivalries as sharp as their loyalty, their love for one another tested constantly in a household where affection was measured by strength and legacy. Anecdotes of their youth became legend. Vaelric once executed an entire detachment for retreating without order. Serene poisoned a rival duchess's entire court with a single whispered rumor. Cale and Corin famously hunted and slew a rogue drake that had taken refuge beneath the very foundations of Ghal Vharros itself, emerging caked in blood and ash to present its head at Merrick's feet. Their fates would later diverge. Vaelric perished defending Blackfen against a rebel incursion, refusing to yield even as fire consumed the ramparts. Serene vanished after a failed coup in the eastern provinces. Her shadow network dissolved but never entirely purged. Cale and Corin were last seen pursuing an ancient worm into the Hollow Heights, their bones never found. This was a lineage long before Yarvik's exile, but proud and feared, heirs to an empire of blood and pride.
The keep of Ghal Vharros was the architectural wonder of its time, a fortress palace raised from black basalt, quarried from the depths of Dreythal itself. Its towers were fashioned to resemble talons grasping at the heavens, jagged and imposing, their peaks crowned with iron spires shaped like dragon claws. Vast feasting halls were lined with the skulls of worms felled in the Elder Wars, their hollow eyes casting shadows by torchlight. The catacombs ran labyrinthine beneath the keep, holding the mummified remains of generations of dragon slayers, with each crypt marked by a carved relief depicting the beasts they had slain. The walls bore ancient bas-reliefs of battles, and at the highest parapet flew banners drenched in soot and dragon blood, a keep built not merely for defense, but as a monument to conquest and dread. Deep within its foundations lay the hidden Hall of Oaths, where new muddrakes carved their names into stone with worm fangs, and the Gallery of Broken Scales, a dim corridor lined with fragments of slain dragons, each bearing inscriptions of the campaign and commander who claimed them. Rumors told of secret passages connecting Ghal Vharros to nearby caves, allowing Merrick's agents and assassins to vanish at will, while the Tower of the Drowned held a drowned worm's skull in its flooded base, where prisoners were said to be shackled and submerged as a grim form of justice. Under Merrick's reign, Dreythal was at its most unified since the reign of Tyrak, its banners unchallenged, its blades sharp, and its history steeped in conquest. Yet already, shadows lengthened in the halls of Ghal Vharros. The paranoia of the bloodline seeded cracks no stone could mend, the kingdom's legacy. At this time, Dreythal was both a feared empire and a cultic state, obsessed with martial supremacy. Its scholars pored over the Drake-marked scrolls, not as fragmented myth, but as living doctrine. Prophecies and omens dictated campaigns, marriages, and assassinations, while across its borders kingdoms whispered of Dreythal's power with awe and fear. The capital, Dreythcairn,
was known as the Crimson Waterfall, its streets paved with white stone imported from dragon nesting grounds, and its great pyres burned day and night in constant ritual offering to the gods of fire and conquest, when in truth, it was all for Slavenesh Tyrak's grandfather, though none knew but him. This culture of relentless dominance bred figures like Yarvik the Shadow Spear, a gaunt and haunted warrior whose cursed spear, nocturnus talon, and blood-soaked past embodied the kingdom's grim legacy. Yarvik's lineage, the bloodlines of House Vharros, traced back through generations of dragon slayers and warlords who carved their names into the very bones of Dreythal's mythic past. But Dreythal's influence reached far beyond its borders. Even the distant sands of Thirinal echoed with its legacy, where blind prophetess Selai the Sand-Eyed, touched by the god Atlas himself, became a living instrument of fate. Her visions, cryptic and terrible, shaped the politics of desert theocracies and merchant guilds alike. Her name invoked as justification for assassinations, uprisings, and holy wars. In the unforgiving wastes of the Alaran dunes, Dreythali influence lingered as both a legend and a threat. Here, warlords and zealots vied for power beneath skies cracked with lightning, where tales of Atlas and his shattered blade of first storm bled into the myths of desert warriors who believed themselves heirs to his fury. Among them marched the Blood-Chained Sons, a savage warband of orphans from the archipelago of Korath, whose chains bore the sigils of Atlas and whose brutal rites echoed the cultic fervor Dreythal once embodied.
Miltner wishes to be on tops and Rajada's game. Was Rira.
Yeah, some Piakin, Turks, Estian, see. Spaghetti, all type. Listen, it was no and it was a remittent bloody males. With African meets with Randy. I'm hard right. Worst stuff is Turkish. Rary, his name's must like that look careful of them. Yam decent to be Egypt. Before you hit the royal shielding in the can have and fits the this for playing. Draw us murder, suppose you'll forward feared. Such as a drink and now isn't good as mirror the hiller really on the period of to get under hell or like now he's pushed it off and didn't know fruit stuff sweet loopy. I had to really like have in those which I leap and his given beak as young then he keeps bringing on daughter and solidly at the end of the hands to them son no not beans mass are all priding that bitch could have made us do was get a warrior penalty of column full okay first just for worst no I'm self work in on a million chari and yes such thing misgailing as their shores and innocence work of a smith funk at their system but I but baz been fucked up me sure met colleague needle and agents team position I'm out of no admits that I top my law is owing in the months and never is the pint milk and stuff the lunch you one I'm is somewhere are sticking there for your house will mean it was and one of them something probably up to could I really true so do for sure was Sarah so and other like without we will let your then I this would be over he'll use it to not and all about a nose in this George and over how I'm this smelling for do it and go let's over and the shield was some correct we have the how your resin is ready to there me just me leave us a bit and give me mother yellow eggs you met his how whatever Berkeley I'm next with you do and she's why not I can add because them help those will not be most of his side mystery let's win them
Thanks for venturing into the storm with me. Every tale in this universe, from the shattered kingdoms to the cursed bloodlines, I write myself. All the art, all the visuals, every drop of atmosphere you feel, that's shaped by hand and pieced together with my passion to create. These stories take a lot of time to make real, so thank you for your patience when the drops take longer than I'd like. If you felt something during this journey, if you got goosebumps, held your breath, or just needed a break from the noise of the real world, do me a solid. Like the video, subscribe for more, and share it with a nerdy friend who needs to touch grass. Or get scorched by Atlas's lightning. Your support keeps this storm alive.